Welcome to another Chef Knives to Go quick look product review. I'm Steve Gamache, and what we have this time is the Enjin SRK8 Bunka 165mm knife. So these are constructed in 3 layers. The center core cutting edge steel is what's known as SRK8 reactive high carbon steel. Heat treat on that's about 63 Rockwell, which is fairly hard, so that's going to have a good edge retention to it. You can look a little bit more information up about this steel on the web page for these knives, but they stated that similar to Shitogami or white number 2, which is very good steel indeed, with some additional alloying elements. I've had 3 knives in here, the same basic length, 165, 170-ish, and I've got a Bunka, Funayuki, and a Santoku, and they've all been pretty consistent in the grinds are pretty clean, they're straight, they're nicely crafted, they're very thin at the tip and the edge for this style of blade. They're all good performers. So it's just pretty much similar in those respects. It's going to be what shape you prefer, maybe what edge profile you prefer. So you can kind of compare these 3 in the 3 different videos. So you can kind of know that about them. They're very consistent, and that's a really good sign from a maker. These knives have a reactive soft iron cladding on either side of that hardcore cutting edge steel. And then that cladding has a what's known as a kudauchi or blacksmith protective finish on that, covering until you get to the grind on there. It's kind of got a sandblasted gray finish on that, and then the edge steel right there. And then they also have a food safe lacquer finished on there that will start to wear off as you use the knife. The weight and dimensions on these can vary a little bit from knife to knife. This particular one is 135 grams or 4.8 ounces. The edge length is about 170 millimeters or 6.7 inches from the tip to the back of the heel. Overall length is about 312 millimeters or about 12.3 inches. The spine thickness, these have all been fairly similar, so they're pretty thick coming out of the handle. And I got about 4.3 on this one. This is actually a little thicker than the other 2, but I got around 4 millimeters of thickness. This one doesn't thin out as quickly as the other 2 did. The other 2 thinned out really fast on the spine thickness. This one not quite so fast. So about halfway down I got about 2.3 millimeters. So this one's actually going to be a little stiffer, a little thicker than the other 2 samples I had. But it starts to even thin down past that 2.3 to 2, maybe slightly below 2 when you hit the corner here, the turn on this reverse sword tip shape of the Bunka. And then you can see, get our camera to focus here, you can see it thins out very nicely towards the tip. These have very thin tips. You can see this has a pretty generous grind here from the length, from where it starts down to the edge or to the tip. So nice high performance tip on these, should do very well. The Funayuki did extremely well. Here is the edge profile. So you can see they're thin at the edge too. So these are nice high performance grinds on these. I guess let's get our beauty shot here. So on the left side of the blade, as you'd be looking at it, we've got some embossed kanji right there. You can see fairly smooth finish on the kudauchi. Part of that is the lacquer on there, but it's not rough. It's got a little bit of texture to it, but you've got a fair amount of texture to it on just the hammering and the shaping. So every knife's going to be a little unique. These have a lot of character to them. And then this is the right side of the blade, but there's no markings on the right side of the blade. I would give the edge about a 5 out of 10. It's kind of average. Part of that could be lacquer on the edge. So when you get these, I would at minimum touch it up on some kind of maybe ceramic rod, or maybe a strop, or even a light sharpening, or a full sharpening. If you're a sharpener, you might as well just pull this out of the box and put a full-blown edge on it. They don't have a lot of, like I said, the edge bevel's there, and it looks like it's fairly nicely crafted. I can attribute that probably to the lacquer on there getting down towards the edge. So you can create a very nice edge on these, no problem. Let's see, balance point is right about there. And they do a real nice job of relieving the corners or edges of the spine, shouldn't say spine, excuse me, the choil into the handle right here. So they've ground that down, and they've also done that with the spine. So it's very comfortable out of the box. Again, balance point is not super far forward. It's just the handles are a little heavier. They're oak. So that's what that looks like. Let's see, blade height is about 46.1 millimeters, kind of getting out of order here. The handles are a octagonal and a little bit on the square side, but they're octagonal, what they call burnt oak. So they've got the burnt oak finish, and then they sand it down here for some, variation in tones to it. It's kind of a cool look. And you definitely have some gaps here where they hammer the tang into the handle, so I would recommend getting some kind of sealant on that, either temporary and keeping up with it, or permanent, and so you don't get any moisture down there. It's not a stainless blade, so you don't want to get rust developing down inside that handle at the tang. So this is what this thing's going to look like on the cutting board. So these have all had fairly decent flat spots, pretty consistent towards the back 40% of the blade. So that's a good sign, again, of consistency from a maker. And so they've all had similar back halves where it just flows into a nice stop, and you've got a nice chopping section in the back. This style of blade, a Bunka, will have a low tip relation to the rest of the blade, so you don't have a lot of belly there, and you're not going to get real high without digging the tip in, which is happening about right there. So you could rock this over smaller ingredients or smaller product, not a problem. With bigger stuff, you're going to start digging the tip in. The Funayuki had a very aggressive belly to it, and the tip was up in this area, so you could rock that way up here. So if you want a little more rocking, the Funayuki shape might be more of interest to you. Again, the performance of these is probably going to be fairly on par with each other, so it's just kind of what shape you like. So very useful. Edge profile on that for different types of techniques. I would say it's not a big rocker, but that's not generally what a Bunka is used for anyway, so pretty much fits the bill. So these are interesting, well-crafted knives with good steel, nicely made and interesting looking, and very good performance, so it's a very nice package. So this is the Enjin SRK8 Bunka 165mm knife.